Look at this goodness. Welcome back to A Better Choice Homestead. My name is Kelly, and on my channel, I focus on food. Growing it, preparing it, and preserving it. I do 3 videos a week. On Tuesdays, I do a segment called Tasty Tuesday, where I show how to make quick, simple, easy, healthy, nutritious, and delicious meals that you can usually get onto the table in 30 minutes or less. On Fridays, I do freeze drying, and on Sunday, I do something that is garden harvest, or harvest preservation related, and that's what we're going to be doing today. I recently did a video on Fiesta Salsa, which was out of this world. It uses up a lot of the cucumbers and the tomatoes you have in your garden, and now I'm being inundated with peppers. So I'm going to make another salsa batch. I'm actually making 2, but the new one for today is actually called Choice Salsa. I am looking in my ball canning book because I had planned to make the jalapeno salsa recipe that is in here on page 14, but it did not have the instructions for using pints. So I went to the National Center for Home Food Preservation and I found Choice Salsa, which is pretty similar, but does have a pints recipe. And I just wrote it in here. That way, next time I go to make a jalapeno salsa, I won't have to look up online. I just have the instructions written here in the open space on this page. So this is going to make 6 pints. I'm going to be doing a double batch, and each batch calls for 6 cups of peeled, chopped, seeded, cored tomatoes, and then 9 cups of peppers and or onions. So you can use any combination thereof, up to 9 cups, and then 1.5 cups of bottled lemon or lime juice, and 3 teaspoons of salt that you can use in canning. So I'm going to make a double batch of this. What I have just done is I made 1 more batch of the Fiesta salsa because I had enough cucumbers and I didn't quite have enough Roma tomatoes available to me at this time. So I went out to the garden and I picked a bunch of my Kellogg's breakfast. So I bulked up the tomatoes using some slicers, and it looks beautiful because of that bright orange color from those tomatoes. So I've got 4 pints in the canner now. I'm going to process those 4 pints with 4 pints of this recipe, and then I'm going to do another batch for the 6 pints of this recipe. So because I can do 8 jars in my canner at once. So yeah, I think that's right. So let me get going on this recipe. I have already chopped everything up because I'm making a triple batch of salsa. It would have taken me 2 hours on film to do. If you want to see me chopping vegetables to make salsa or tomatoes, I've recently done that Fiesta salsa canning recipe. I've also recently done canning crushed tomatoes, where, we core, score, boil, peel, dice. Well, we don't dice them in that one, but you get the idea. So we're just going to get to the recipe. I have all of the ingredients ready. All right, so a double batch is going to be 12 cups of tomatoes, and I'm going to get them into my 12-quart stock pot. And I think I had that measured out perfectly. I should have about 1 cup left in here. And I do. All right, 12 cups of tomatoes. And next we can do 9 cups of chopped jalapeños and or chopped onions. So I think I'm gonna go, so that's gonna be 18 cups total. So I'm gonna start with my peppers and we'll see how many we have of that. 1, 2, 3, 8. I have just a little bit left in here. So it looks like we're going to do about half and half. So here's 9 cups. 1, 2, 5, 6. I need a little bit more onion chopped up. All right, we need 3 more cups. See, I thought I was done dicing and slicing. I think the Fiesta Salsa threw me off because that was kind of a last minute, yes, I want to get more of this on my shelf. And it shorted me a few cups of onions, but that's okay. I got plenty of onions on standby. One. Two. Perfect. Next to the pot, I need to add my lemon or my lime juice. I'm going to use both because I have both open in my fridge and I don't want to open up another of the same. So I'm going to start with the lemon and try to get as much of that as I can. I need a total of 3 cups. So let's see how much of the lemon I have. 1, about 1.5. So that's about 1 recipe worth. There's 2. And there's 3. So just a tiny bit left that I didn't have to open up a whole new bottle. I don't think that that's going to be too weird on the flavors in there. I think it'll be fine. And then last, we need 3 teaspoons of canning appropriate salt. So 6 teaspoons total. I use Redmond's real salt. 1, 2, 5, 6. Now I just need to bring this up to a boil. And once it comes to a boil, I'll turn the heat down and we're going to simmer it for 3 minutes. So let me get this stirred up. I'll show you what's going on in the canner. I've got my pressure canner on the stove already. This is a water bath canning recipe, but if you've been here for any of my canning videos, you know that I like multi-tools. I don't own a water bath canner. I don't have room to store a water bath canner. So I can do water bath canning in my pressure canner. I just can't do pressure canning in my water bath canner. So I get away with the 1 tool. Oh, this looks incredible. I will give you a look at this. But in my canner, I have a rack on the bottom. My canner came with 2 racks because I can double stack pints when I pressure can in there. You want to make sure you have a rack on the bottom of your canner. If you don't, your jars will probably break. I have jars in there filled with water, and the canner, the burner for the canner is turned on a medium right now. So there is a little bit of steam coming off of this pot because we want our jars to be hot because this is a hot pack canning recipe. That means you want your canner hot, you want your jars hot, and you want the food that you're putting into your jars to also be hot. And I have 4 empty jars in there right now, but I also have the 4 jars in there that I filled with the Fiesta salsa. And that's okay because they're staying warm in the canner underwater. So let me show you what this looks like. It looks amazing, and I'll show you what the canner looks like. Here is our what do they call it? Choice salsa, really heavy on the jalapeno peppers. I really like a spicy salsa. So this to me looks very festive and amazing. And here is my canner It has 4 empty jars that I will put the new salsa in, and then I have 4 filled jars of the Fiesta salsa, which is a lighter color because I used those orange tomatoes. I used red, but I also used the orange. I'm going to let this salsa come up to a boil. I'll show you what that looks like when we're there. Then we're going to let it simmer for 3 minutes, and then we are going to get to loading some jars. This looks fantastic. All right, we are just about at a boil here. It was boiling. I was able to stir it down, so I'm just let it go for a minute, and then we're going to simmer it. All right, this is up to a boil. I'm going to go ahead and turn the heat down to a low, and we're going to simmer that for 3 minutes, and then we can get some jars filled. All right, we have finished our 3-minute simmer, so I'm going to go ahead and start filling jars. I have a ladle to do that. I have a funnel to help me do that. I have my debubbler tool plus my headspace measurer. I have my jar lifter so I can get the hot jars out of the canner, empty them in the sink, and then fill them up one at a time. I have some white distilled vinegar. This is going to be used with a towel to wipe the rim of the jars, just to clean off any food debris that might be on there, anything that could interfere with a good seal. It's also going to allow me the opportunity to check the jar for any nicks or cracks. And then I have all of my lids and bands set up and ready to go. So we're going to get going. I just need to lift out my jars and just take them to the sink and get them emptied. So I have a hot and steamy jar because I'm going to be putting hot and steamy food into it. We don't want to shock the jar, and it's also a hot pack recipe, so we want everything about the same temperature. I also have a little spoon here just in case I overfill and I need to take some out. We're going to a 1/2-inch headspace. Let's see how we did there. I can fill that up just a tiny bit more. And that's perfect. So I'm on the second step of the tool because it's in 1/4-inch increments. And now I'm just going to get my towel, which is a napkin, a cloth napkin, to wipe the rim of the jar, make sure it's nice and clean. I'm going to take my lid, which is already inside of a band here, and I'm going to go ahead and put it on. And I always turn my lid counterclockwise until I hear it seat, which I just did. Move it forward with just a finger or two, no thumb, no gripping, until it won't move anymore. And then I can turn it finger tight. So finger tight would be until you feel resistance, and I'd have to do a little crank to get it to tighten down anymore. And then this can just go in the canner. That looks a little full to me. I'm taking my debubbler tool and I am running it through the jar, and I am displacing the food. I'm trying to work out any air bubbles that might be down there, because air bubbles can adjust your headspace, and your headspace is measured for proper canning. So you want to make sure that you're at the right headspace. And to do that, you have to make sure that you don't have any air pockets down below. Perfect. Wipe the rim of the jar. Seat your band. And load your jar. Debubble. I can fit a little more in there. Perfect. Wipe the rim of your jar. Fill her back up. You know, when I did the last salsa batch, the Fiesta salsa, I did them in the half pint jars and said, oh, this will take us forever. I did a double batch, but I said, oh, this is going to take us a while to get through. So that's why I'm doing them in half pints. It's perfect amount for a meal because we don't tend to use a lot of salsa here. But before I even had a chance to put the jars away, 2 of them were already eaten through. So that's why I decided to do another run on that. It's a really good salsa. All right, little more. That looks good. And that's my 4 jars. So I am going to go ahead and get going on this. I'm going to put a lid on this stock pot to keep it as warm as possible. I will heat it back up though when we're ready to do the second batch. And the rest of this white distilled vinegar, I'm going to pour into the canner. I have all the lids on the food in there, so the vinegar is not going to get down into the salsa, but this just helps prevent a white cloudy film that can form on the outside of your jars if you have hard water. So that's what that was for. I am using my pressure canner as I mentioned, so it does have a steam vent and it does have a dial gauge on it. I'm not worried about either of those 2 things. When you do pressure canning, you line up the arrows, you seat it down, and then you twist to seal it. I'm not going to do that. I am just going to set this on there and then turn up the heat so this can come to a boil. When it comes up to a rapid boil, I can start my 15-minute timer. When it's done, I'll take the lid off, and then they just need to sit in the canner for 5 minutes, and then we'll take them out. And at that point, we'll put the new jars in and start to heat this salsa back up. So let's get doing that. I'm just going to place the lid. There, it's just placed on there. I'm going to turn the heat up to high. We're just going to let that come up to a boil. And we're going to put a lid on this to hold the heat in. This does have a little tiny hole on the top of it to let some steam out. So I am just going to cover that up. I'll bring you back to show you what the rapid boil looks like when I start my timer. I've just started my timer, and let me show you why. We are under a full boil here. All right, our jars are ready to come out of the canner, but first I wanted to show you that this tool here has steps on it. So if I put the tip of it on the top of a jar, as long as the top step is underwater, we are still under 1 inch of water, which we want. So I usually go a little bit above that because I use my pressure canner, and there are a couple areas on this pressure canning lid, such as this vent pipe here, and also this little pop-up valve over here that steam can escape from during the canning process. And steam is essentially water that has been heated up enough to steam, convert from water to steam and escape. So we want to make sure our jars stay underwater, even though I am having steam escape. So I typically start with more than 1 inch of water over my jars. First thing I'm going to do is turn this pot back on. It is still very hot. So we're going to get that going again. I've got 8 new jars here filled with hot water. These are going to go into the canner once I get the current jars out. I've got a towel set up here on my counter. I'm going to take the jars from the canner and put them over there, straight out of the canner, no tipping, even though there's water on the lid. And my type A personality wants to get that water off by tipping it, don't do that. Please don't do that. The jars are not sealed yet. Even if they have pinged, they are not fully sealed yet. So there's a compound on the inside of your lids, this orange compound. That has to fully seal onto the jar in order to make sure that you have a shelf-stable product. If you tilt your jar, the liquid or the food from inside the jar can get under that lid onto the rim of your jar and interfere with that seal. So you want to make sure that you're not tipping your jars, you're not moving them around, you're not touching them more than you have to for 12 to 24 hours. So straight out of the canner, straight onto a towel. The reason I have a towel set up is because I have granite countertops and they are cold and the jars are hot. We don't want to shock the jars. So they're going to go straight onto a towel and I'm just going to ignore them until probably tomorrow night, when then I can take the bands off, I can wash them, I can dry them, I can label them, and I can put them away. So let's get these out. Straight up. I let them drip a little bit because they are drippy. There's a lot of water on the lid, but I'm not tipping it. One just pinged. But pinging does not mean it's sealed, at least not fully sealed. All right, with those back there, I'm also going to turn this canner back on. All right, I put that canner on to about a medium high. These jars are pre-filled with hot tap water. So I'm going to put those in. So again, we're not shocking the jars, right? There's hot tap water in there. And the canner has cooled down for probably about 8 minutes now. So it's not boiling hot anymore. This salsa smells so good. I can actually smell some of that lime juice in there, which I was a little concerned about from a flavor profile perspective, but it smells really good. We will be giving that a little taste test. All right, my jars are in. They are fully underwater. They are not under a full 1.5 inches or so of water. So as I take the jars out to empty them, I'll empty a little bit of the jar water into that water as well. This is back up to a boil, so I'm going to back the heat off of that because we need our jars in the canner to heat up a little bit before we can fill the jars. All right, this looks good. We've got a simmer going on this. This one is just about to come up to a simmer, so we're almost ready. Remember, we just want them about the same temperature. Maybe another 2 minutes. And we're ready to begin again. But you know what? Salsa is a 15-minute water bath can, so this goes so quick. I'm going to dump a little bit of that water out to make sure, from each jar, to make sure that I'm fully under 1 inch of water. This jar is now hot to the touch, very steamy, and our salsa is still very hot as well. So it's perfect. Remove the air bubbles. Don't just go straight up and down. You want to actually move the food around. A little shy on that one. That's perfect. I've got my towel here. I'll start with the clean side. I put more vinegar in my dish here. I'm checking for nicks and cracks, and I'm cleaning the rim of my jar. I'm gonna turn the band counterclockwise until it seats, but it just did. Well, now it's not seated. Now I have to do it again. Okay, and then move it forward with just a finger or two, no thumb, until it won't go anymore, and then until you feel resistance. fill this back up. It's such a good feeling knowing that I'm putting food on the shelf for myself, for my family, for my friends. It's garden fresh. I grow organically. I don't use any type of pesticide spray whatsoever. So I know that this is really good quality food. And I don't have to worry, if something happens and the world went crazy and we all had to stay home for up to a year because of a pandemic or something else, and there wasn't a lot available on the grocery store shelf. It's peace of mind that way for sure. It's also a money saver because you're growing the food. It costs money to buy the seeds and to get your garden started, but the upfront cost goes away over time, especially if you save seeds from your garden to grow the produce the next year. So it definitely is easier on the pocketbook than paying the ever increasing prices at the grocery store. It's super convenient. I will one day soon show you my pantry. I have a rather large spare bedroom upstairs, and it is a pantry. I've made it into a bedroom pantry. There is a lot of food up there, and that brings me a tremendous amount of peace of mind. I've mentioned before that I have had some pretty significant health issues when I entered my 30s. Never had any health issues before then. I was always perfectly healthy. I had one surgery as a young child. I had appendicitis and my appendix ruptured. I went into a coma. I almost died. And that was a pretty significant surgery. But since then, nothing. And it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I started having problems with my bones and specifically with my hips, and ended up being told, it was in your head. There's nothing wrong with you. I'm going to turn it counterclockwise until it seats, move it forward until it won't go forward anymore, give it a turn until you feel resistance. Because they were doing x-rays, and x-rays wasn't showing anything wrong. And so I was just forced to live with the fact that I was becoming more and more immobile, wasn't able to walk very well. And one day I couldn't walk across my kitchen floor. I was literally stuck in the middle of my kitchen floor. I couldn't bear any weight on my right leg. And I called my doctor, who is a great doctor. She retired last year. I miss her tremendously. She's been with me for the last 30 years. So getting used to a new doctor is challenging, but anyway, I digress. I called her and I said, look, it's not in my head. There is something wrong. You're not doing the right tests. Please do something different. Find a different answer. So she called around. This was on a Friday night in 2004, I believe, 2004. She called around and she found a place that was pretty local to me, that an MRI place that was still open. Their radiologist had gone home for the day, but the technician was still there. And he said, yeah, I'll go ahead and scan her for you. And I went there and I had the MRI. And when he pulled me out of the machine, I started crying and I just said, please do not tell me that this is in my head. Please tell me you found something. And he said, well, I can't tell you anything. I'm not a doctor. And he said, but I can show you something. So he helped me get off of the MRI table and he brought me carefully into, I'm going to turn this heat off now. We're almost done here. Into the room. This is back before things were digital, and it was actually a picture that he had to put up. And it was a picture of both of my hips and thighs, the bones. And there was a very evident difference in the left and the right. So the right one is the one that was giving me problems, and it was stark white. And in fact, it just looked like white chalk. And the left was more of a denser, grayer, darker bone. And he said, do you see this? I said, yes. What does that mean? And he said, that means that you're going to be seeing an ortho first thing Monday morning. Your leg is about to shatter into a million pieces. It's completely dead. That bone is dead. So I was so happy to hear that. I don't even know if I can explain that, but for, going for almost 2 years, being told there was nothing wrong with me and being in an incredible amount of pain, to finally have an answer, I was thrilled. So I did end up going to see an ortho, and that ortho I'm still seeing today. And it turned out I had avascular necrosis of the right side. And he deemed it idiopathic, meaning they don't know why it happened, because I don't have any of the precursors for it whatsoever. And the treatment options were a hip replacement or a core drilling decompression. He wanted to try the core drilling decompression first because hip replacements are a really big deal. So we did the core drilling decompression, and that did nothing. That is where they drill holes in your femur, and they take some veins and they kind of stick the veins up through those holes to try to vascularize the bone and try to force it to uptake some blood and some nutrients. And it didn't work. We gave it 6 months, and then we did, the pain was still there. It was ever increasing. And then he did another scan, and then it was determined that my hip had completely collapsed. So there's no coming back from that. Absolutely had to do a hip replacement, which we did immediately. And I was really scared. I was really scared to have that done. But I remember waking up from that surgery elated. It was the first time in years that I didn't have any pain. I think I even said out loud, "Oh my gosh, why did I wait so long to do this? I wish I would have done this years ago. It was amazing." And that was that, until about 6 months later, I went back to him and I said, "Okay, it's starting to hurt again." And he's telling me there's nothing wrong. Don't worry about it. And then he says that it might just be because you had avascular necrosis. You might not get a really, excellent result from the hip replacement, but it's nothing to worry about. This is just how you're just going to have to learn to live. And I kind of accepted that because I didn't know any better. And then within that same year, I have 2 more jars to do. I think we're going to be really good on volume here. I started having the same pain in my wrists, and in my wrists. And so I told him, "Hey, I think I've got avascular necrosis in my wrist. It's the exact same pain. And sometimes I can't use my hands at all. I can't even move them." He says, "No, that's impossible. You don't get avascular necrosis in more than one area of your body. There is absolutely no way." And then I argued with him and I said, "I know my body. I know what's going on here. I can feel it. It is the exact same pain." So he sent me in for more tests, and sure enough, came back. I had a vascular necrosis of both wrists. What do you do about that? You can't do a wrist replacement. So I just started wearing splints on my wrists as needed, because with avascular necrosis, the bone starts to die because it's not getting the blood and the nutrients that it needs. But if you completely rest it, it gives the bone a chance to regenerate. So I just continued to go through periods of time where I have to splint, even now, 20 years later, and rest it. But then fast forward to, I think, that was, my hip replacement was in 2005. Fast forward another 3 or 4 years after that, and I started having pain on the left side in my hip. I went back to him, and mind you, I've gone to him many, many times saying my right hip hurts, worse, having more problems. And I said, "I think I have now avascular necrosis on my left hip." And he said, "Kelly, no, stop it. You do not. You do not." He did x-rays. He said, "See, they're fine." I said, "X-rays didn't find it the first time." And so he sent me for an MRI. And sure enough, when the MRI came back, I have avascular necrosis on my left hip too. So no idea why I have so much avascular necrosis in my body, but that's what ended up requiring my second hip replacement. And in trying to find out, what was causing that condition. They ran a whole bunch of tests and nothing, couldn't really pinpoint anything other than they found out I have factor V Leiden, which is a blood clotting disorder. So less than 1 chance probability, but still there, that could have contributed to it. So we don't really have an answer for that. And then fast forward a couple years after the left hip replacement, canner is full. I'm going to turn this up. And I can't walk again. The right side, I can't walk again. I had to be carried to my car one day in downtown. And I call him up and I said, look, I had been going to him probably every 3 to 6 months this entire time, all these years, complaining, something's wrong, it's in your head, you just have to get used to it. I was told to go, I think I've told part of this story before, but you have to go out on disability. You're gonna just need to buy a wheelchair. This is just your life now. And I wasn't gonna do that. No way. So I just kept pushing them. And these 2 doctors, my primary and my ortho, they're very, very good. And at least they do listen to me when I push. And so then he went ahead and he ordered some lab work. And it turned out that I had cobalt and chromium metal poisoning from the first hip, which was a metal on metal hip. And my body had been absorbing metal for 8 years. I got very, very, very sick from that. I still have problems today with my hearing. I have problems with my vision. I have to get my glasses upgraded to a stronger prescription like twice a year. My eyesight just keeps failing. I ended up with breast cancer twice. I had a lumpectomy, then I had a double mastectomy, and then I had to have my ovaries removed, and then I actually lost my gallbladder. There were just a plethora of things that happened because of that metal poisoning. So long story short, I learned later on in life, after I found out that I had metal poisoning and I went through hell to come back from that, that you really need to be kind to your body and you really need to put things into your body that can heal you and keep you healthy. And that's kind of where my health journey began. It's when I started gardening. It's when I started making sure I was buying organic. It's when I changed everything about my life. It's when I started keeping a log of all the foods and all the nutrients that, and all the healing properties that different foods bring to you. So a lot of times on my channel here, I talk about what tomatoes bring to your body as a health benefit, or all the different ingredients that I use. And that's why I am trying to empower you through my learning journey to take advantage of this information when you're younger, before you have all these major issues. The body is an incredible machine, and as long as you keep it fed well, you're going to get a lot of miles out of it. All right, let's get the lid on this because this is heating up. We need it to come to a boil. That's probably going to take about 10 minutes to come up to a boil, so I will bring you back. Timer's gone off and I have just turned the heat down on this, so I'm going to open this lid. Notice how I'm opening it away from my face. I would get a scalding steam bath if I opened it the other way. I'm just going to set that lid aside, and that's going to sit for 5 minutes. And in the meantime, let's take a look at the salsa that I didn't can. There's a little bit left of each. All right, here I've got the Fiesta salsa. We've got little bits in here of the Kellogg's Breakfast orange tomato, which is so incredibly flavorful and delicious. Those tomatoes are amazing. We've got the cucumbers in here. I've got onions in here, and I've got jalapenos as well. Over here, it's just the plum tomatoes and the onions and the peppers. So let's give a taste test to these. I'm going to start with the Fiesta salsa. This is the one with the cucumbers. That's really good. Definitely has a bite to it. I like that. It's a little bit fruity from the Kellogg's Breakfast tomatoes, and it's got a little bit of a cooling profile to it too from the cucumbers. I think it's an amazing salsa. Let's try this choice salsa, which I have a feeling is going to be a little bit hotter because there are a whole lot more jalapenos in here than in the other salsa. Ooh. I'm getting a subtle hint of that lime juice in here, and I'm liking that a lot. That is amazing. I love that. I'm gonna sit here and eat salsa for dinner. That is really good. All right, we're gonna let that canner cool down for 5 minutes. We're gonna get the jars over here. I'll show you what those look like when they come out. I'm taking these out of the canner the same way. I'm not tipping them. I am just putting them on the towel, straight up and down. You can probably see that there is a lot of water up here. That's okay. I'm leaving that. It will dry just fine on its own. Now, you really cannot tell the difference between these salsas. So I'm gonna just remember that these 4 jars on this end were the Fiesta salsa. I will write that on the jar itself. I use a Sharpie on the jars because I don't like writing on the lids. I reuse the lids for dry storage. My type A personality doesn't like when I have different things written on the lids than what's in the jar. Also, it ensures I don't have to spend money to buy labels, which I used to do. A Sharpie written on glass stays until you wash it off with soap and water. I think it's perfect. Unless I was doing like black beans or something where I wouldn't be able to see, then I'll probably slap a label on it. But we got 16 pints of salsa. Add this to the 16 half pints I already did, and I think I'm good to go for salsa for a year or more. Thank you so much for joining me for another Sunday fun day canning salsa. My name is Kelly. You're at A Better Choice Homestead, and I do hope you come back and visit again soon.